Sorry guys, really excited to do this video. Hopefully we can spread some good positivity and excitement. But I've just been on Discord after my England squad video came out, and one of the Allcott ultras said that he was happy with the squad, but he said that Bowen should be in there. Jared Bowen should be in the England squad ahead of Foden, Grealish, Mount, Rashford, Sanchez. Welcome to this video. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be talking about every single Premier League club's player of the year. I'm going to try and put that to one side and try and move forward. If you'd like to move forward with me, then please do consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy this video by the end of it. And can we hit a like target of 3,000 likes? If you think Jared Bowen shouldn't be in my England squad video and squad, hit the like button. Let's kick off. Fucking Jared Bowen with Arsenal. Undermining the experienced players this season has been Bukayo Saka, who has had the most minutes of any Arsenal player this season. He's had 2,472 minutes. That's 27.5 90s this season. And of course, he's only 19 years old. And although the stats aren't that incredible in terms of blowing you away, I think the fact that Arsenal have been able to rely upon him so much has spoken volumes about how brilliant he's been. And the amount of different positions and roles that he's had to undertake highlights that he is wise before his years, in my opinion. 8 goal involvements this season, 5 goals and 3 assists. Doesn't really tell the true story because he's got 0.4 goal creating actions per 90, which is 4th in the Arsenal squad. This is someone who's played left back and centre midfield as much as playing right wing and left wing for them. Alongside 3.5 shot creating actions this season, which is 3rd in the Arsenal squad. So this lends itself to the idea that he has been so creative. Like, he's been playing out of his skin in terms of his creativity to help a team that has just struggled to score goals throughout the season. He isn't blowing us away with the stats, but it's not truly about that. And ultimately, the reason why he's my player of the season is because you've had so many players at Arsenal that haven't stood up to be counted. But he, along with Kieran Tierney, are literally the only two that you can say throughout the season, playing as many minutes as he has stood up to be counted. Now, generally, I want to go with consistency and having played throughout the entirety of the season, but there will be a few occasions where that doesn't work out. And for Aston Villa, I feel like that's one of those. Jack Grealish is my player of the season. And the reason I say that is because despite missing 12 matches, his stats are still being compared to others and he's still beating them with them playing the entirety of the season, which is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, in terms of fouls being drawn, which is highlights a player that you've beaten and you've taken him out. Yes, maybe he's dived a little bit, but let's not get into a debate about diving now. He's got 99 fouls drawn, and the next best is Zaha with 80. That's with missing 12 games. Also, you look at the slump that Aston Villa have had creatively since he's not been in the side. That's a big part in this as well. I think it just highlights how integral he is to them. And he also outranks anyone in the league in terms of carries into the penalty area. For the whole league, 76. Rashford's got 60. The fact that I'm comparing him to these kind of players, and he's still not just in the league, but miles in the lead, speaks volumes for a player who would have been right in the reckoning for player of the season if he'd continued as he was. Jared Bowen. Jared Bowen. Really? I like him. I've spoken about him in videos. I think he's great. But Jared Bowen. This next player is not long until he's going to be on every club's wish list. It is Bissouma. Bissouma's had a great season where he's really stamped his authority on that midfield and as one of the best defensive midfielders in the Premier League. Without the ball, his tackles and interceptions are 4.94 per 90. The next best is Veltman with 4.43. He really is that important player in that team because they do like to progress the ball. They do like to get bodies forward, both from those centre-backs, but also the attacking players as well. And so he has to be good on the ball as well. And he has been. And no one touches the ball more in the middle third than he does. 35.1 touches per 90. And overall, he's having 42.5 touches per 90. So he's involved all the time. He's also scored a screamer this season against Everton just before Christmas. So he really has got the lot. And I think as someone who's going to not just sit there, but get on the ball and not just lump it upfield, but keep it, retain it. He's really got everything. Been super impressed with him this year, and it's not long before he will get picked up, I'm sure, but hopefully Brighton get a decent amount of money for him. So lots of players on this list have been critical for their clubs, but quite possibly none more so than Chris Wood at Burnley, because he's been living off scraps all season, and the stats back that up. He scored 12 goals this season. He's been so important. To kind of get that across, the next top scorer is Ashley Westwood with 3 goals. Amazingly, despite those goal scoring charts, Chris Wood ranks third in terms of shots per 90, 2.21. But then when you have a look at shots on target, he's got 1.27, which blows every other Burnley player out of the water. So what that shows to me is that he is profiting from very, very little at the moment this season. And he has just been so clinical for Burnley. And he fits Burnley to a T. That's why he's been there so long. That's why he scored so many goals for them. And he's had a great season, of course, this year. But the other side of it is not just the goals, but his aerial duels, which are always so important for this Burnley side that does play percentage football at times. 44.5% success rate from his aerial duels is easily the best of any player in the Burnley team. And he wins the most aerial duels per 90 in the entire Burnley squad with 5.44. The best season of his career and my player of the season for Burnley. Good regardless of the scenario. My player of the season for Chelsea has to be, of course, Mason Mount. It's an amazing story, this, that Chelsea can spend 200 million quid, sorry, that was QPR, 200 million quid on attacking talent. And a guy who's come through the youth system, who's been on loan at Derby in the past, is the man who you'd completely rely upon. You know, he has more touches in the attacking third than any other Chelsea player this season, 34.5. And in so many metrics, he has been both consistent and consistently brilliant. He's played the most matches for Chelsea this season, 34. He started the most matches, 30. He's played the most 90 minutes in total, 30.1. He's been good, whatever the scenario, whatever the situation, whatever the pressure, he's been absolutely brilliant, and been brilliant on both sides of the ball. As an attacking player, he scored 6 goals this season, which is an okay return, probably should be a little bit higher. Second most when it comes to assists this season for the club as well. His expected assists were actually 7.5, so in the Premier League, he should have got more assists this season. He's also creating the most key passes per 90 out of anyone in the Chelsea squad with 2.82. Second most progressive passes per 90 with 5.68. And shot creating actions are 4.98. Now, that would blow people away normally, but Ziyech, he's second to Ziyech, who's got 5.28. But the point remains with the other players that are around him when it comes to these per 90 metrics, there are often a few outliers here. It's the consistency. To be able to consistently have these kind of numbers per 90 throughout the season speaks volumes for the season that he's had. And if you look at without the ball, his pressures both in the midfield third, 10 per 90, and in the attacking third, 6.94, just highlights that this guy's output is really, really special. Really, really special. And it does, I think it went underrated for a while, but slowly people started to realise that. The only player with more pressures per 90 than Mount this season with 21.6 is Billy Gilmour with 23. And Billy Gilmour obviously hasn't played the same amount of minutes as Mason Mount. And a great season for him. He's one of those who I think with better strikers, he would have got more plaudits, more numbers, more goals, and he would have, been even further up in our estimations as a player. But I think time is telling. There's almost like this water torture of quality from him. And he deserves player of the season. Always plays with a smile on his face. Great finisher as well. I'm excited to see what he does at the Euros. Shall we all say it together? 1, 2, 3. Abire Eze. Absolutely. Of course it's Abire Eze. I told you on this channel he was going to light it up, and he did. He's been an absolute breath of fresh air for the league. And Crystal Palace fans, I'm sure you'll agree with me, he's been a breath of fresh air for Crystal Palace in terms of how they play as well. Yes, it's been a pretty rancid last few months of the season because you've been safe, but he is forever a bright spark. In terms of goals, 4.2 from an XG of 2.2 this season. An unbelievable goal against, I think, Sheffield United it was this season. And in terms of goal creating actions per 90 in the top 5 leagues, he's in the top 4%, 0.14. His dribbling is absolutely stunning. He just glides past players. And okay, that's a stylistic thing, but I think he's kind of lifted the spirits of a lot of Crystal Palace fans throughout the season. Heartbreaking that he's got injured, but I'm sure he'll be back stronger than ever, and I can't wait to see him again playing more games, maybe for England under 21s. Maybe that ship sailed now. But more importantly, I could see him getting some England caps because he's come into the Premier League and he's found it easy at times. The obvious choice is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I'm not going to go with the obvious choice here. Yes, he has scored 16 goals for Everton this year. It's been a breakout year for him. He's been absolutely fantastic. But as the season has progressed, he has sort of waned a little bit, and I think there have been some missed chances that have disappointed Everton fans. So I'm going to go with Ben Godfrey on this one. I think he's almost like 4 months off getting an England call-up. And again, if Gareth Southgate puts him into the squad, I don't see a problem with it, because what he has shown from coming from a team that got relegated quite handsomely last season into this team with some really big names, and for him to play left back, to play right back, to play centre back, to show that flexibility, and I think importantly, to highlight how good he is in one-on-one situations. He is averaging a success rate of 67.6% against dribblers, which is the highest in the league, the highest in the Premier League. For a player that wasn't in the starting lineup at the start of it, of course, because he was signed quite late on, he's come in and he's been absolutely fantastic for them. I love that he's good enough to play left back and right back, both in terms of his passing range and also his defensive stats as well. The mobility that he's got for someone of his size is pretty impressive. So I'm really excited about him. I think he's proven now with that ceiling that I think he can go even higher. And I think, an England call-up is on its way. Will it happen soon? Who knows? But I think he is destined to be quite possibly maybe a captain for Everton at some stage. He could be there for a long time. His blocks per 90 is 2.88. Just highlights that he reads the game brilliantly as well. Big things are coming with Ben Godfrey, and he's already had a fantastic season and has to be my player of the year for an Everton team that started so well but has disappointed late on. He's worked his tits off. He's stayed abreast of everything that's been thrown at him this season. Yeah, he's milked it a little bit now and again for the cameras, but my player of the season for Fulham has to be Areola. The reason grow up. The reason I'm going to pick Areola is because, quite simply, they should have been even more dead and buried than they are going into the final game of the season. They haven't scored enough goals, but they should have conceded probably a lot more when you look at post-shot expected goals. Areola's got a post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed of plus 7.5. So if you think of a striker and their expected goals and how much they score more than their expected goals or less, the plus or the minus, that's what we're doing here. And plus 7.5 basically means that he has saved or stopped 7.5 guaranteed goals from being scored, according to XG, which is the highest of any goalkeeper. To put that in context, Emi Martinez, who I think has had a cracking season as well, he's got a plus 6.6. So for him to do that for a team that's, down the bottom like they are, is pretty special, to be honest. Third best in the league when it comes to coming for crosses as well, or stopping crosses coming into the box behind Meslier and Pope. So really good in both those metrics. He's had a great season for them, and it could have been a lot worse for Fulham without him in the team. The likes of PSG and Madrid were right to go for Areola because he is clearly a good goalkeeper, and it's going to be interesting to see if he doesn't stay with Fulham, where he goes. And I really hope he stays in the Premier League because I've got loads more puns I can do. Classically Brazilian and a wonderful addition to the Premier League this season, I'm going to go with Rafinha for Leeds United. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to get angry at that because Patrick Bamford is so unlucky to miss out. But of course, that's the thing with the Player of the Year. You can only pick one. And I'm going to go for Rafinha. And the stats will back it up at somewhat. He is uniquely creative. But I think the big thing for me is just when you watch him play, it's undeniable just how much he brings to Leeds United. Bamford, so much for this specific Leeds United team. He is absolutely integral to his work rate, but his finishing's been great as well. But the reason I'm giving it to Rafinha is just that he's just different to any other player, basically, on this list, or certainly in that Leeds team. And for him to come in, be an important signing, and for him to deliver like he has done with 6 goals and 8 assists this season. And it's the variety of the shot-creating actions that he's created this season. 8 shot-creating actions through his own dribbling this season, which is really, really high. And then if you add that throughout the season, 58 chances that he's created through open play, and then 24 through dead balls. He's a great player to watch, and sometimes those players who have that skill, you see those skill moves and you think it doesn't, so what? You haven't got anywhere with it. In this team, with the space that's often there and the one-on-one man marking that can kind of come to be for Leeds United in those games, he's been absolutely lethal with those skills, and it's led to output. He's got a unique skill set. I love watching him play, and a great FPL asset as well. He's got to be my player of the season. Arguably world class. My player of the year for Leicester City has to be Yuri Tielemans. Aside, of course, from the goal in the FA Cup final and his performance in that cup final, because actually the further I get away from that cup final, the more I think Leicester weren't actually that great, but he was great. It will be called the Tillerman's final, right? But he's a player who's just grown and grown as seasons have progressed. And what I love about him is his appreciation of a pass, his positivity when he passes the ball. 5.78 passes into the final third per 90. He's well ahead of anyone in that Leicester team. Same goes for progressive passes per 90, 5.72. He's averaging 8.53 completed passes when he's under pressure, which just highlights just how much coolness he brings to this Leicester City team. He's completing more passes than anyone else in this Leicester team as well, because he is the fulcrum of the side. And he's just so cool. He's so cool. His interceptions have gone through the roof over the last 3 years, year on year on year. So he's getting better every single year, and he is arguably world class. I think it's getting close to that now. He's just a goal machine feeding my fantasies. It's Mohamed Salah. He is my player of the year for Liverpool, and it's got to be, look, it's down to that output again. I think the problem with Salah at this stage is that the expectations are just so high for him that, he's almost just like, okay, well, yeah, you're all right. You might have the golden boot again. What? But we've got to remember just how well he's done in a season where Liverpool have really, really struggled. And let's remember, he scored more goals this season in a season where Liverpool have massively struggled than he did last season in a team that, ran away with the league. 19 goals last season, well over 20 this season. It's amazing to see. His conversion rate as well. He's only had 44 shots. At the time of recording, he scored 22 goals from 44 shots. And that's a conversion rate, of course, of 50%, which is really, really strong as well. And in terms of kind of getting into great positions, he's continued to do that. Only Mane, 12.9, has got into has been on the end, of more progressive passes per 90. Yes, he could have had more assists. His expected assists were 5.5, and he's only got 4 assists this season, so he could have got one more there. But I think we're nitpicking, really, aren't we? Salah's had another great season in a team that hasn't. Another easy one, this one. Ruben Dias gets the Player of the Year award for Manchester City, just about beating Gundogan in this one. And stats-wise, he's only winning 0.68 tackles per game, but I think that's down to the overall organisation and brilliance in terms of possession, but also without the ball of this Manchester City side. But I think the thing you can say with that is that the fact that we're all raving about him is down to the fact of how brilliant he's made the rest of the team. His organisation, he seems like a cracking replacement for Vincent Kompany. You can see similar traits in the two of them in terms of their leadership and organisation, putting their body on the line, but also being good on the ball as well. I guess the one stat that kind of says it all is that he hasn't made a mistake that has led to a goal this season. He has no errors from him have led to goals this season. For Manchester United, less so, because there's two front runners here, Luke Shaw and Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes, 18 goals, 12 assists this season. He has been superb. There's no doubt about that. His numbers have been ridiculous. The key passes, he's out in front with that metric. But only 9 of those goals are from open play. And I think that does play a factor when you're looking at two elite players this season. And so I'm going to go with Luke Shaw as my player of the season because I think he's been possessed. He's been playing out of his skin all season long. And from left back, both with the ball, his creativity, his carrying of the ball, and his defensive stats are really, really special. In terms of shot creating actions per 90, this is the left back, remember, 3.9. Okay, Bruno's at 4.88. But that is literally, that's your job to do that. Literally is his role to get on the ball and create. Those are wonderful numbers. But for Luke Shaw to be up there, Luke Shaw is 5th when it comes to key passes this season. And to put that into perspective, the shot creating actions, that's more than Rashford. That's more than Pogba. That's more than Martial and many more Man United players this season. And he's not a one-trick pony as well. His tackle percentage this season, and when it comes to dribblers running at him, 60% of the time he's making the tackle. So defensively, he's been brilliant for Man United as well, the best in that metric. And then back with the ball, in terms of progressive carries per 90, 7.37 per 90, which puts him in the top 8% in the top 5 leagues in Europe. From where he was at the start of the season with Telles coming in to where he is right now, unbelievable. I've got to be a little bit tempted to give it to Willock because he's been on fire, hasn't he, in the back end of the season. But he's only started 9 games for Newcastle. So I'm going to give it to Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson scoring 12 goals this year, 12 goals and 5 assists. I think the big stat here is that he scored 12 goals from 16 shots on target. Is that because he's living off scraps? I don't know. But he hasn't had that many shots either. So I think that's a pretty impressive return for Callum Wilson in his first season. Only 23 starts. I think the big shame for him is that if he could have played more and continued to score, then maybe he would have been knocking at the door of England's Euro squad. David McGoldrick. I mean, it's arguably his best ever season. because he's playing in the Premier League. Now, of course, he didn't get the 15 goals that he's got in the Championship, but that was in the Championship. He's playing in the Premier League. And so to score 7 goals this season, and to score, maybe he can go, how'd you get on when you're in the Premier League? Well, I did score 37% of my team's goals. Yeah, but how many is that? 7. I mean, that is a bit depressing. But in terms of sort of carrying the ball forward, he's got more progressive carries than any other player in the Sheffield United ranks. Most touches in the attacking third as well, but then he is a striker. I've got to be honest, it's the best of a bad bunch. But I mean, congrats, Dave. An absolutely fantastic professional. James Ward-Prowse is my player of the season for Southampton. And I just think he's just such a well-rounded midfielder. And he wasn't in my England squad. But if he was put in the England squad, I wouldn't be too bothered about it, because he gets every little last drop out of his talent, and actually he's probably a bit more talented than we give him credit for. Of course, everyone's spoken about the set pieces, and he's been absolutely deadly. He's a nightmare when he gets on a dead ball. But actually the split of his chances created this season from a deep-lying midfielder have actually been a bit better than I expected. 35 chances, shot-creating actions, in fact, from open play this season, and then 37 from dead balls, which I think highlights that he isn't just a guy who gets on the balls and plays in, amazing free kicks. He's got a lot more to his game. 8 goals from 5.1 XG highlights just how good he is at those free kicks, because a lot of those are coming from those. And he's completing passes, though. He's completed 55.9 passes per 90 this season, more than any other Saints midfielder. So as much as he is great at those dead balls, he's been great everywhere else as well. 3 players obviously stood out for Spurs this season: Son Heung-min, Højbjerg, and Harry Kane. But Harry Kane has to be the player of the year, especially in his final year. Maybe not. Most likely, yes. He's got to be player of the year, because I think if in terms of the style that they've played in this year, which has been pretty woeful, and the scraps that he's had to live off, it's an interesting one, because if you look at the average touches per 90 in the final third, he has 18.1, Harry Kane, this season. And in terms of the Golden Boot, it's been him and Salah going for it. Salah averages 33.8 per 90. But there's been a lot less space for Salah, whereas Harry Kane, there it probably is, because they've been playing on the counter-attack. That said, for him to have a conversion rate of 40% when you're having 4 shots per 90, Harry Kane obviously loves to get a shot off, but to be scoring 40% of those is pretty impressive. And then you look at the assists and the goals, the goal involvements in total, 35 goal involvements this season it's outrageous. It's pretty phenomenal, to be honest. 22 goals, 13 assists. The last person to top both those charts in the Premier League was Andy Cole in 93-94. So it's not something that happens, very regularly. So for him to do that, he has to be player of the year. Okay, he's more than okay. He's been absolutely brilliant. Okay, Yokuzlu is my man for West Bromwich Albion. Now, people will be screaming, what about Pereira? He scored so many goals. Yeah, true, but it's not all about that. And for West Brom, a lot of the time, it's about stopping the opposition. And Yokuzlu, since he came in, has been fantastic. I know West Brom fans absolutely love him. He's added a lot of metal to that central midfield area where they were struggling a little bit to kind of get the people that could do that kind of job. I know Conor Gallagher likes to get around and put those pressures in, and his tackles with 1.84 isn't terrible. But Yokuzlu's come in, and per 90, he's getting 2.36 tackles. I think in the stat that did it for me was tackles and interceptions. It's staggering. 6.22 per 90. He's miles ahead of anyone else when it comes to interceptions per 90 of 2.76. And so, and also the pressure that he put on. His pressures were 9.29 per 90 as well this season. Just so much work rate, understanding, anticipation, which made West Brom a better team this year, despite going down. What a season it's been for West Ham. And in terms of Player of the Year nominees, there's just a long list here. You've got the likes of Antonio, Declan Rice, Dawson, Lingard, Kufal. But I'm going to go with Thomas Souček, because I think that the numbers really back up just how impressive he is and what a weapon he is for West Ham. He's found the Premier League surprisingly easy. He scored 9 goals this season, none of which are penalty goals, which puts him with the same number of non-penalty goals as Bruno Fernandes. That's not having a go at Bruno Fernandes, just highlighting how good Thomas Souček has been this season. That's 0.27 per 90 goals, which is in the top 3% of midfielders in the top 5 European leagues. That says a lot. That says a lot about him. But we won't stop there. He's averaging 3.5 clearances per 90, which is fantastic. 5.71 aerial duels won per 90, both of which put him in the top 1% of Europe's top 5 leagues. And to put the cherry on top of the icing of this delicious West Ham Czech cake, Souček has won more aerial duels than any midfielder in the top 5 leagues this season. And for Wolves in a frustrating season, it's a name that I seem to say on all of these videos. It's Pedro Neto. 5 goals and assisting 6. 11 goal involvements is an acceptable amount this season. Of course, he's had injuries at times along the way as well. He's been the most creative player, the most dangerous player for Wolves this season. And I think the one metric where you would expect him to be completely kind of blown away would be progressive carries. But he's actually quite close to Adama Traore, 10.4. He's got 9.65 this season. And no one has got the ball into the 18-yard box more than him this season for Wolves. 1.38 per 90. Not fantastic, not a wonderful season, but I think you'd say the exact same for Wolves. It's probably a season that, with the elevated expectations of the club, that they'd quite like to forget. So there you have it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed my Player of the Season video. If you have enjoyed it, do 2 things for me. As ever, please do consider subscribing to the channel. If you've been watching the videos for a while and you haven't done it, there's still so many people that seem to watch the videos but don't subscribe. So it really would make a massive difference. It would be wonderful if you would hit the button. Hit the like button as well. Let's hit our like target. I can't remember what I said. 3,000? Should we go with that? 3K? Can we do it? Can we do it? Jared Bowen. I'll see you next time.